Introduction to the Old Testament, Unit 4, Archaeology. Archaeology is a method of finding out about the past of the human race in its material aspects and the study of the products of the past. This may include how people lived, how they worshipped, how they built, their art, their trade, their travels, and most of all, their written records. We should learn about the environment in which they lived, what the climate was, if they were hunters, what kind of crops they grew, their domesticated animals, and their contact with other groups of people. Often we are asked, what does archaeology tell us about the Bible? William F. Albright is characterized as one who took the Bible in one hand and a spade in the other hand and tried to find out as much as he could about the Bible from his archaeological expeditions. Well, we really aren't able to prove anything about the Bible. So when we ask what has archaeology done for the Bible, we have to say it has given us background material that will often illustrate events that happen in the Bible. Archaeology has helped us confirm some of the descriptions in the Bible, such as the attack of Sennacherib on Lachish and his failure to take Jerusalem. Bones have confirmed the animals found in the texts, and weapons give us much information as to the means of warfare. Weights and measures have been found. Idols illustrate and confirm the gods that were worshipped. What we do not find is how people continued to fail to keep the law and continued to engage in realpolitik and vox populi. These are mental activities which do not show up as artifacts. Idols, part of the result of sinning, do appear as artifacts. Household pottery is one of the most useful artifacts, for it was often broken and fragments were left lying around, while different shapes and styles can be shown to be associated with different groups of people. Because pottery is easily broken and needs to be replaced, it is the most common artifact found in an excavation. In March of 1890, Sir W.M. Flinders Petrie arrived in Palestine. He had to wait for several weeks for the Turkish government to give the necessary permission to excavate. Turkey at that time had jurisdiction over Palestine. He then made his way to a site that was supposedly Eglon, for he had been contracted to do an excavation at Eglon. He was very disappointed at the site and he looked elsewhere. He came to a site known as Lachish, but it was abandoned after 3 days. 6 miles from his camp, however, he found a mound called by the Arabs Tel El Hessi. It was at this site, 16 miles east of Gaza, that the science of Palestinian archaeology was born. It was actually the site of Eglon, where he was supposed to go in the first place. Tel El Hessi was a mound of earth measuring about 200 feet on each side at the summit and more than 100 feet above the earth. Pottery recognized that the torrents which swept down the Wadi each year had already exposed 1,000 years of history. Pottery wrote in his first report, and I quote, "In future, all the tells and ruins of the country will at once reveal their age by the potsherds which cover them." End of quote. No museum pieces were found, but the great discovery was the demonstration by Pottery and F.J. Bliss that the history of ancient Palestine was written in the forms and shapes of broken fragments of pottery. Pottery is very important, and I'd like to refer to that in a book, Archaeology in the Old Testament, by James Pritchard. Now, James Pritchard produced 2 huge volumes that are indispensable for the study of the Old Testament. One is called the Ancient Near Eastern Texts, and that contains all of the texts that are related to the Scripture. The other is the Ancient Near East in Pictures. And so you have actual pictures of articles that have been found in the archaeological process. And I'd like to illustrate some of that pottery that we have accumulated over the last few years. I have here examples of pottery. Pottery can be found in any site in Israel. There are gobs of it. And for instance, here is a broken piece of pottery. All you have is the base that still exists, and that is very important because it gives you information about the pottery and how it can be dated. This is the base of the pottery. Here is one that shows part of a rim that has been used. And here's another one with a type of rim. These are what is kept for analysis. Now, there are thousands and thousands of pieces of pottery on each of these tells, and they're available. You can pick them up, and they don't mind you taking them because there are so many of them. Here is another one with a type of rim. And all of these are important for the dating process. Now, I also have some artifacts here that are from different periods. First of all is a very small one here. This is broken. It used to have a handle here, but this comes from the Chalcolithic period, and this would be from 4000 to 3000 BC. So this is the oldest piece of pottery that I have. And then you have other, for instance, this is a very good example of a Middle Bronze oil lamp. Notice that this is from the time of Abraham, and this has 4 different places for wicks. So that this is very important. And then we have another early bronze made like this, and most of the lamps are of this type, where they are pinched. And the wick then goes here, and the oil, of course, is poured in there. And this then gives you light. And that is an early bronze. As I mentioned, this one is Middle Bronze. And then this is a Israelite oil lamp. It is very heavy. It is very crude. But this is typical of the Israelite pottery. And then there are several other types here. We have a late Roman oil lamp, and many of these look very similar, and so it is difficult to know exactly how they are dated. And this is an unusual one because it's a round oil lamp. Now this one is a Roman cooking pot. You notice it has two handles, and the pot then is used for cooking food. This is a very good example of that. It was Pottery who established the need for scrupulous and accurate recording of every scrap of evidence. The observation that certain types of pottery belong to certain layers of occupation, and the dating of those strata by the process of objects whose date was known, made possible the chronology of ancient Palestine. Their trustworthy standard had been checked, revised, and improved since Pottery first proposed the principle that pottery is the essential alphabet of archaeology. But the principle remains the same. Attention is given, first of all, to form, particularly the shapes of handles, rims, and bases, then to decoration. In the process of archaeology, we must first discuss the tell, a man-made mound that is the result of several layers of civilization. People chose to settle where there was a good supply of water, or fertile land for farming, or on a trade route, or on a strategic location. Whatever made them settle there in the first place drew them back to the same location again and again. Megiddo has about 25 occupation levels. To excavate an area, there are at least 3 methods. The first and the most simple is the surface survey. The expert merely picks up broken pieces of pottery from the top of the ground. These will give him or her an idea of the dating of the area and may reveal who lived there. A second type of excavation is the trial trench. A trench is dug from the top of the mound to the bottom. The pottery found will reveal the number of occupations that were established there and the dating of those occupations. Pottery used this method at Tel El Hessi. The final method is the full excavation. This does not mean that the whole mound is excavated, but you do start from the top and work down. Usually a square of a few meters is selected, and several squares may be developed at the same time. An attempt is made at Megiddo in the early stages to strip off a whole layer at a time. But this was given up after a few years because it was too time-consuming and costly. When a layer is removed, that material is lost forever. It is better not to destroy a whole layer, but to leave some of it so that it can be revisited later, since methods change and improve over time. The developing of archaeology had its beginning with pilgrims who visited the Holy Land on pilgrimage. They took back stories of their experiences, and often artifacts were taken too. Then museums became involved to find material for their shelves. Many sites were ruined by plundering methods that often destroyed valuable artifacts. Clay tablets were often overlooked, and today they are considered top-quality artifacts. Tablets are written material telling us what people thought and give us historical information. When Napoleon went to the Middle East, he took along many scholars who copied inscriptions and found the Rosetta Stone, which was used to begin reading Egyptian. The Rosetta Stone was found underneath the water by the French. The text was composed in ancient Egyptian, written in hieroglyphics and demotic, while the bottom was written in Greek. Since the meaning was the same in all three languages, the Frenchman Jean-François Champollion worked out the Egyptian by comparing it to the Greek. The British relieved Napoleon of the Rosetta Stone, and it is now in the British Museum. Similarly, Henry Rawlinson figured out cuneiform script from the Behistun or Bisitun inscription of Darius the Persian. This was written in three languages also: Old Persian, Elamite, and Babylonian. Modern scientific archaeology is now used on most sites where the material can be protected from looters.